Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Plaw, at Andrew Plaw Tech, back again, bringing you another weekly PowerShell Podcast episode where we cover everything in the community, tools, tips, tricks, and explore the journey and share some advice on how you can maybe have a career similar to our guest today, who I'll be introducing shortly. But first, I want to let you know about the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ. We have a pretty cool PowerShell scripting channel. Lots of fun stuff going on there. Pretty supportive community. Love to see it grow. I also want to give a huge shout out this week to a project, which I've actually given a presentation to the Gainesville PowerShell user group. Check us out. We do virtual meetings and hybrid meetings and in-person meetings if you're in Florida in the Gainesville area. That project is PS Koans. And this is a project I used a while ago whenever I was more in the beginner phase of things. And I thought it was really cool, but it is still really cool and it's still valuable for me. So I was giving a presentation on it. What is it? It is basically doing PowerShell, learning PowerShell by solving pester tests. If you don't know what pester is, that's fine. Basically, you run something, it returns, hey, there's an error on this line of a script. You open up the script and you make the line work. So it introduces you to all kinds of variety of topics. And I was surprised that very early on, I was actually learning new things, a lot of new things, especially about numbers and stuff like that, because I don't have a traditional programming background and I haven't had to interact with numbers a bunch in my sysadmin work. Like integer kind of just did the trick for me if I ever needed a certain type. There's actually a lot of stuff because this is built on .NET. So there's some cool intricacies there and a whole bunch of topics that can get you going. If you're the type of person that likes to learn by doing and just reading about things isn't enough, and maybe you can't connect the dots with how to apply it and you don't want to take on a big project, check that out. If you have any questions or want some support, feel free to reach out to me. And shout out to Rain for putting that together. Very cool project right there. Blog of the week is by Clayton Tiger. He has a simple tip for GitHub Copilot that shows you the syntax of how you can interact with files. If you're using GitHub Copilot, maybe you want to add something to a file. There's a particular syntax you can use to have it put it in the file for you kind of thing. I won't try and tell you the syntax because you should just read the blog. Speaking code can be challenging. Also, Jeff Brown, he has a new blog on PowerShell Advanced Functions, Getting Started Guide, a pretty comprehensive resource. Shout out to Jeff. He is on the job market. If anybody knows of anyone looking for some super awesome PowerShell skills and a bunch of awesome stuff there, check him out. PowerShell Saturday in North Carolina is coming soon. If you're going to be there, make sure to come say hi. I would love to meet some new people in the PowerShell world. But that's our pre-show. I want to bring on the bestest of the midwestest, Drew McClellan. Welcome back to the podcast. Last time we spoke, you were fresh off the heels of attending PowerShell Summit, fellow scholarship recipient, but now you've had a lot of awesome career changes since then, and I want to hear about that. I want to hear about the new skills you're working on. One thing I found out about this podcast is there's a lot of people in that beginner phase of things trying to put their career together, trying to figure out what it's going to look like. I think a lot of them look to people like you and try and emulate what you've done. So welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you. I don't know about best in the Midwest, but definitely from the Midwest.
No, I didn't say best I said bestest in the Midwestest. Okay, yeah. Got it.
Just happy to be back. It's great to see you again, Andrew, as well. I did miss you guys, and I was not able to go this year, but hopefully in the near future. But yeah, it was for sure an awesome experience going and enjoying OnRamp as well.
Yeah. So you went into the OnRamp, which is kind of a program geared for people earlier in their careers, kind of gives them a pathway of the different technologies they might interact with, rather than just exclusively PowerShell. There's some PowerShell mixed in, but you've come a long way since then. Have you applied a lot of the things you learned, and did it prepare you at all for where you are now?
Yeah, I think so. I think just trying to kind of keep your nose to the grindstone and always just trying to be branching out into different directions is always beneficial. A lot of the talks with other people's tools, though I haven't used a lot personally yet, it was very inspiring to hear about how everyone else's background kind of comes together and how the IT career takes them in different directions. So just kind of ride it seemed to be the one. Just enjoy your time with what you're doing and just have fun with it. And I think all the opportunities will come to you.
And for those who don't know, you got your career started off as a chef for like a decade or so, right?
Yeah, so new career for me. I started in IT, probably probably about 5-ish years or so ago. Started at IT support. Did a lot of in-person desktop support, and then that's kind of what sparked my interest in PowerShell. I wanted a way to kind of start doing stuff to computers remotely. Not that it was, bothersome to support people in person, but it would be less intrusive to do so. While they're working on the computer. So that's kind of when I stumbled into PowerShell and kind of learned about all of its fun automation possibilities, and just kind of been trying to cut my teeth and have it do more for me while doing other things.
Yeah. So you dabbled a bit when you were on the help desk. And then I think after Summit, you found a new role as a junior sysadmin.
Yeah. I work at an MSP now, and I started here as a junior sysadmin, and I feel like with the reach that we have with clients, mostly remote, of course, as well as in various data centers, it's immensely time saving to be able to schedule and automate stuff. RMM aside, just running scripts with PowerShell from it, as well as locally.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty fun. I remember last time we talked to you with Jordan, you talked about how you loved IT because you get to always learn. And it sounds like that's doubly so true for your current role, because you're no longer a junior sysadmin. What are you now?
My official title is System Administrator 2. So I definitely got a little bit of a promotion this year, and very grateful for that. Feel very
Well
honored.
deserved. I feel like any MSP, one, they should be using PowerShell, especially if they have Windows clients at all. And two, you need to reward those in your organization that are helping push forward automation and PowerShell forward. So sounds like you're in a good spot, man.
Yeah, everybody's pretty open to it. Definitely not a stranger to the company of being using PowerShell and whatnot. So it's definitely fun to collaborate with others and help out where requests are asked.
Yeah.
On projects.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard the Justin Grody episode that came out a few weeks ago, but
I listen to every episode, of course. Yeah, it was great.
Nice, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Still listening to every episode, even though you're a big
episode.
timer now. Gosh, man, that's cool. So I want to dive in a little bit more about some of the stuff that you've been learning. Any newer stuff, any differences in your new role? I think in a couple of notes we shared, you mentioned that you spend a bit more time researching things and implementing things, which sounds like it's right up your alley as someone who loves to learn. But sort of what's keeping you busy these days?
Yeah, so I like to, ABL, always be learning. So I think I tend to keep myself busy here with a lot of our tooling that we offer to various clients, rather security oriented, not as much PowerShell involved with a lot of the SaaS tools that we use to stand up and protect clients. But it's been a lot of fun. I really do enjoy documentation. It seems like that's maybe not the norm for some, but it's definitely what I really like to do, test it out. We have a very diverse environment that we're very fortunate to have to be able to test out and then deploy out to clients.
Nice. Yeah, as you know from listening a bunch, I always talk about the importance of having some safety, whether that's like making sure you feel okay to take risks and learn new things, or make sure you're okay to test code and feel comfortable with that process without deploying it to 100,000 machines or whatever the case may be, because that could, gotta have that safety.
Yeah, for sure. Within maintenance hours, of course.
It's funny you mentioned documentation, because you told me you're doing more research and stuff, and I actually have a question. Based on that, I'm sure you might have a newfound love for documentation, which it sounds like you do. And anytime you're interacting with doing anything new or implementing anything new, good docs is just the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely a shout out to vendors when theirs are pretty clean. So when we go to try to roll out for various environments, with everyone's unique situations, that when I go to in turn extrapolate it for us to then pass out to everyone else to follow, that it definitely makes life a little faster to get it out and done.
Yeah. So you have a background in PowerShell. You were kind of cut your teeth with it early on, saw the value in it. I found for me that it sort of changed the way I approached problem solving and automation in general. And it sounds like you're not exclusively just plugging away at PowerShell all day. You're hands-on in IT, and oftentimes that is not just PowerShell. So how has your background in PowerShell informed your current duties, where you're dealing with a lot of different moving pieces and kind of connecting them together?
For sure. I find that I've been getting a little more into Bash too. I've been interacting with Linux a lot more. That was pretty foreign to me. So doing a little home lab stuff. We have some lab work here, things that we can do to implement what we're trying to do on Linux devices. So I find starting to automate some Bash installs, uninstalls, and stuff like that, as well as making sure services start and stop when they should. But especially like RMM, like I feel like that's probably everyone's big sticking point too, is making sure that it's always on and not stopped.
Yeah, hard to manage devices if you can't access them.
Sure.
Well, that's really awesome, man. Any fun projects? What's your terminal looking like these days?
Oh man, I'm probably pretty boring in that
Basic
sense.
Barry like me?
I have like changed my background to look like, I don't know, like 90s hacker green with black background, but no like no fancy like plugins or nothing.
Windows terminal user?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel like I have to be terminal for everything. A little like Windows subsystem for Linux stuff in the back end there for sure. Just playing around, but yeah, mostly vanilla, unfortunately.
Are you big into security? Is that one of your kind of core interests, or that's just kind of part of the duties of the job?
But both. I mean, I feel like it's kind of the final frontier. You can go to school for it and learn about it and then get into like an analyst role. But I feel like the longer you work in IT, going through support and then system administration and possibly networking, it's hard to button down and be a security expert if you don't have a good grasp on all the other aspects that come with it.
It is one of the challenges of doing security is you need to know so many different things, which, I mean, you've been doing IT for a while now, so it sounds like you do know a couple things, man. That's cool.
Get in there, stick it in the trenches.
Now, you mentioned you could go to school for security. Did you go to school for IT, or how did you get that initial start?
No, culinary school. So
yeah,
back in the day. But, no, I just kind of always was interested in technology and did a little bit of like custom computer building and stuff, gaming PC. Obviously, that's not IT by any means, but being familiar with hardware definitely helps troubleshooting at least hardware problems. But yeah, I just kind of got my foot stepped into the door within IT support around COVID after being furloughed, and I figured it'd be kind of temporary. But I think I said this last time too on the podcast that now that I'm in IT, I definitely can't go back or to food service. So no regrets.
Hard to give it up, man. You don't have to stand on your feet quite as much. You get to research and learn more new things.
That was the biggest change for me, was going from standing for 12 hours to sitting for 8 to 12, depending, was a huge challenge for a little while. But
do you get yelled at more as a chef or as a sysadmin?
I guess maybe as a sysadmin, I would say. I haven't been in a kitchen for a long time, but you just mean like with my past history and all that?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I would probably say food service, just because it's kind of, like it's not always the wild, wild west, but sometimes it can feel like a circus at times on a Friday night, at like 7:00. So everyone's just kind of going fast and nothing personal. Feelings get hurt, but then everyone's, in the same boat, working for the same goal. So.
Yep. Yeah, I can imagine that would be different. I've seen Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay. No, thank
Not
you.
Not very true. There'd be a lot of HR problems, but it is good television for sure.
It's great television. Who's your favorite chef?
As of late, I would have to say Matty Matheson is kind of up there for me.
Yeah,
but I'm no stranger to Gordon. Yeah, newer. But Mario is definitely one of the greats for sure.
Mario, what's his last name?
Batali.
Okay. I'm not much of a chef over here. What's a good beginner entry-level recipe? Maybe takes 15 to 20 minutes, but still, it's going to make my wife think that I'm a genius. What's one of those?
I feel like risotto is a no-brainer. It's like basically you're just making rice. There's a little more to it. There's a little more nuance to it, but at the end of the day, you're just making cheesy rice, and it's delicious.
Nice.
Throw a little asparagus on there, maybe a grilled salmon or a little fillet with a red wine reduction or beurre blanc sauce, your choice.
The choice is mine. Gosh. Yeah, I don't know if I can do that.
I believe in you. You got this.
All right. I'll send you photos because we're friends outside of the podcast and I always see what you're up to. And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, this guy is definitely a chef. I need to make it to Ohio sometime.
For sure. Maybe we could get a little cook together when next time at Summit, if allowed.
Oh yeah, maybe hit up John Janelle. He lives local. He
Mm-hmm.
might have a couple of things we could use to
A
cook
little
with.
sterno burner or something.
Yeah, that would actually be so much fun. Yeah, we'll have to make that happen sometime.
For sure.
Nice. Well, I always trying to, I'm trying to eat a little healthier too. So it always is helpful when you can cook your own food for that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's kind of funny now. I feel like I cook more than I used to.
But you enjoy
Now
it
that I
more
don't.
now?
Yeah, just because I just don't do it like for 12 hours a day, and it's like it's kind of the last thing you want to do.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing to cook at home?
Man, favorite thing. I'll be honest. It's not very like gourmet by any means, but like taco night is the best. Get some ground beef, season it up, maybe put a little chorizo in it, or do some chicken and soft, flour tortillas, corn tortillas, whatever. Lots of jalapenos.
Nice. Is there anything that the chef world informed you on, or some skills you got from there that are helpful in the IT world?
I feel like organization is very important in both parallels. Making sure you have all of your items stocked, ready to go before it's rock and roll time. I feel it's helped me be a little more maybe diligent in how I tend to plan things down the road a little bit.
So with where you are now with your PowerShell skills, are you just writing kind of one-liners? Are you writing scripts, modules? What do
No
you find?
modules. Yeah, definitely got a little growing personally for that to go. But functions are like kind of my baseline now, which feels good. That wasn't always the case, but I feel like I'm getting pretty close to it. I really just need to sit down and iron it out personally.
Awesome. All right, Drew. So what do you think about PowerShell 7? Are you just a Windows PowerShell person, or like are you running 7 on your box?
Yeah, I've been using 7 for quite a bit. I try to write for the most part within 7, and then test with Windows PowerShell just for it's not everywhere in most clients' environments, so it's just kind of how it is. But yeah, I tend to typically write in 7. What about yourself?
Always 7. I mean, I'm on a Mac these days, so always PowerShell 7. Even on the Windows VMs that I have for certain things, I'm still using 7 there as well. I do test because a lot of people who view some of the stuff I do will be on 5.1, or if I'm publishing a blog or something like that. Like a lot of people who are earlier in their phase of PowerShell maybe have never even heard of PowerShell 7. I think in Windows PowerShell there's a little thing that pops up that says check out PowerShell 7. But I think when you're early in that journey, there's a lot of things you're maybe overwhelmed by, and that might be one of them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking about Mac and stuff like that, not so much PowerShell related, but as far as package management on the Mac goes, are you kind of a brew guy, or do you tend to branch out to anything else? Yeah,
Homebrew, baby.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It is. I mean, I just enjoy it. It works, and I can just update everything at once. It's pretty mature tooling, so I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's cool.
You're full Windows, right? On what you're using?
Well, yeah. I also had gotten a damaged Mac that I fixed up, so I could. It's like an older, it's a couple generations back now, but it's an Intel Mac, just to kind of like get a little bit of Bash and Mac OS environment stuff. So when I'm trying to do things at home, I also have that ability.
So you've listened to every podcast episode. That's quite a few.
It's good stuff.
130 something. I don't know. 135 maybe. So
Getting up there.
I got a question. I need some feedback. What's been helpful for you from the podcast? What have you learned or seen or been introduced to that has been useful in your career?
Boy, I think as far as useful in my career, PowerShell talks aside, I think it's very conducive for me to hear about everyone else's, I don't want to say like personal struggles, but just like the trials and tribulations that they've gone through. And I think it's very interesting to hear their journey on how they got to where they are now, especially for some of the people that we perceive to be as like, kind of like juggernauts in the industry, PowerShell aside, just in IT in general. So it's very enlightening to hear about their backgrounds.
Nice. Is there any tools or anything like that you've heard about on the pod that you were able to take to work at some point and get an easy win?
Yeah, I would say like the import Excel module. I find that one's like very I feel like it pays for itself. It's super useful. So props to Doug for sure, and shout out to Josh King. I love me some burnt toast. So we find that very useful. Yeah, nice. We like to leverage that occasionally. So
We love that burnt toast around here. I'm a huge fan of it. And it's cool to hear you say that, yeah, the journey part is what's important to me. Because in a podcast format, it's like, I can't teach you all the intricacies of the pipeline and how to do things. There's some room for that. Mostly it's pointing people to things, but it's about getting that roadmap of what's out there in IT and also letting people know that they're not uniquely bad. Like your struggles are going to be similar to some, different than others, but there's going to be some struggles. And if you push through it, like a lot of the people we talk to, like yourself, you're going to find yourself in a better spot. And it is just such an enjoyable career. I've found where you can just have that growth and now in a position like yours, people can look up to you and replicate some of the successes that you've had. I think it's pretty sweet, man.
Yeah, it's been a very fun journey. So I feel very fortunate for what I get to do. It's a lot of fun. Definitely always got to be learning.
And we get paid for it, man. That's the crazy stuff.
For sure. Yeah. Fixing grandma's printer, pays the bills now.
Yes. Oh, are you doing printer stuff?
No, just going from pre-IT to, helping out with the family with stuff feels full circle.
Yeah. I try and avoid printers at all costs.
Yeah. Bad example. It is kind of my nightmare.
Yeah, me too. And in my last job, I didn't know that. I thought I was unique in hating printers. I'm like, what? But that's because I was responsible for them. So my coworkers didn't want to let me know that there was a whole world out there of other people who hated printers as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Actually, my previous job, they had very large format printers, and those ones were very hard to work on, and very hot as well with the large format printing that they have. So definitely not my favorite type of work. So shout out to printer techs for sure.
Yeah. Shout out to printer techs. It's always nice when you have a contract where someone else will do all that work.
Yeah,
That's
for
the
sure.
general approach I've seen.
For sure.
So when you first encountered PowerShell, how did it impact your day-to-day work and what were some of the challenges you ran into, like early days?
Oh man. Well, like I found that SIM and WMI was what's the difference? What's the ideal one to use? What's coming? What's going? And also leveraging like where to find all that. So I feel like it's very useful for me. That's kind of when I stumbled into like all the Microsoft docs that were, similar to like a man page. I still find myself going back and adding that into my script so I can later then reference to save myself a little bit of time navigating through all the ins and outs that PowerShell has to offer.
How do you balance writing like one-liner commands, you're running them in the terminal or the console, and turning that into maybe a reusable script or a tool you can use in the future? Like, where do you find yourself in that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I still feel like whether it's a one-liner or like a couple functions, I still find that I just have a couple variables and then I make those a couple one-liners, and then once it works, to save myself a bunch of headache instead of trying to jump into a function immediately, then I can throw in a little bit of try, catch, if else loops in there, and then from that I'll throw it into a function once it's working, just as a little bit of a sanity check to build it back up to what it needs to be.
Nice. Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap with scripts and functions, especially if it's kind of just doing one thing. You don't need to reuse it in multiple places. You can put parameters on scripts. You can put parameters on functions. You can call them in a similar way. So yeah, scripts, nothing wrong with scripts. Just when possible, make sure you're adding parameters so they're a little adaptable for the future. Maybe you have a X variable now that you have hard coded, which I see in a lot of scripts of lower people who are maybe earlier in their journeys. Where they just kind of hard code it at the top and they expect you to edit the script. A little bit less of a good experience rather than just calling the script and then passing the parameters yourself. Just like you would with the function. You just do a backslash instead of the function name.
For sure.
Do you have your profile configured?
You mean on like terminal and all that?
Yeah, your PowerShell profile, $ profile for those who are uninitiated.
Oh, no, pretty vanilla there too.
Well, tip. I'd say using the profile is great if you have those weird little helper functions that maybe you don't want to put in a full module just to have one function. You toss those in your profile, which you can access $ profile. We'll show you the current profile, and you can then every single time you open up PowerShell that uses that profile, it will make those accessible to you. I found that's a good kind of starting point for writing functions that help your day-to-day.
Yeah, honestly, I really should do it. It's just kind of lazy at this point because I find like with a lot of different applications and logs that we might go through, they're not all in the same time format. So that would be extremely helpful for like, get date and then moving the time zones or just viewing, I'm in this, the log was from that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Do you know Matthew Doust? He's the one who does the psweekly.doust.dev.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I think he recently put a video on his YouTube about dealing with dates that might be helpful there. I mean, I don't know if it exactly solves your problem, but I think he has a module for it as well of expanding time spans and stuff like that. But yeah, dates are kind of odd. I think there was a joke I read before. It was like, what do we want? Better date formatting in PowerShell. When do we want it? Get date dot add day -1 or 0 or something like that.
Yeah. HH, yeah, -SS.
Yeah. There's dates and numbers are a thing that I like to not have to interact with when possible, but it's an inevitability.
For sure.
What about APIs? Are you dabbling with APIs yet?
No. Well, yeah, I have been trying to dabble with them. I've been kind of messing around with invoke REST method to grab like raw HTML. Not super PowerShell related though. It's more of like, for fishing, trying to get weather data and like when was the last time it rained and
fishing with an F. I got it.
Not related, but just trying to and then do like a regex to filter through some stuff to make it useful to me, and then I can kind of just like have a little function that'll give me information about the rain in the past few days, something like that.
Yeah, I think there are, without doing the HTML, if you just do invoke REST method, there are some kind of public endpoints for that. I've written a few. I wrote them for a Poshbot chatbot that we had at work, just because it's a great, simple, it's a one-liner invoke REST method. I think it was like wttr.app or something like that. But there's a bunch. Same thing with like dad jokes or cat jokes. There's all kinds of different REST APIs that people put together as passion projects.
Was that a Stephen Judd one, the dad jokes?
No, but I know he has one saved to his profile right now. I could guarantee it. 1,000,000%. Judd, if you're listening, confirm, hit me up privately or publicly, I guess, if you want. But I know you have a dad joke function on your machine. The thing about Judd is, though, he doesn't do generic dad jokes. He lives in the moment. Sometimes I think he might prepare, but he is just dad joke minded. Everything he does is a dad joke. You could say anything in the world and he will have a retort that is dad jokey.
For sure.
What's your take on dad jokes? You like them? You hate them? A little bit
I'm
of both?
a fan. I feel like I'm in the minority probably, but yeah, we a very few do them here, and I find them hilarious while everyone else groans. So I think they're hilarious.
I love awkward moments, and they lead to a lot of those, which I enjoy. It's just a lot of times I'm the awkward moment. So I appreciate it from the external perspective, but as the me, I'm like groaning, and then I make the same jokes. Like on a Zoom call with my coworkers, and I just hate myself, but I also laugh and I can't stop. And then my family is starting to like, come on, Dad. My wife makes them too. So I live in that world.
Sounds like a good environment.
It's an environment. What advice do you have for people who are maybe in your shoes? At least your shoes a few years ago. They're kind of getting started out in PowerShell. Maybe they don't have that super strong programming or whatever. Didn't go to school for 4 years for it kind of background, and they're trying to cut their teeth, maybe feeling overwhelmed. What advice do you have for them?
I would say just, ask a bunch of questions, take good notes, and just keep reaching. I think whatever is interesting to you will come easier to learn. So just kind of work on when you got a little bit of free time. Whatever you think is interesting, and it'll just kind of come a little bit easier for you.
Can people reach out to you if they're early in their career?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I might not have all the answers, but yeah, I'd be more than happy to help in any way I can, for sure. PowerShell or just IT in general.
Yeah. A big one I find also is if you're passionate about something, even just a little bit, follow that. It's going to be a lot easier to learn about something you're passionate about than it is to like pick up a book on something that you're not going to interact with, you don't really care about. It's going to be hard to go through 300 pages of that bad boy.
Yeah, maybe that's like a cardinal sin in IT. I don't know. It sounds like maybe, books aren't for you as well, because I'm definitely not a book reader by any means. I just gotta do it and, take a note on it, and then I feel like I'm good to go.
Yeah, I've worked through some books, but again, my passion level needs to be like a million for me to actually go cover to cover. It can be challenging, but what I do like is getting some inspiration points, learning enough to get started. enough to be dangerous. And then FAFO, fool around and find out, I think is what it stands for. I don't know. I didn't do the Googling on that.
I like that one.
It's a little, it's podcast friendly.
For sure.
What about debugging? Have you gotten into that world at all?
Ooh, no, and that's something I definitely need to. I've seen many a talks and still a bit over my head as far as doing mocks and whatnot with pester tests and all that good stuff. Maybe after I get a little bit down the road with modules, it'd probably be the next step for me, but not personally. You doing any of that?
Yeah, some debugging. So I host internal PowerShell groups at work, and we have like some of our developers who are big into PowerShell. It's the sysadmins we have and all kinds of stuff. And recently we've been working on a little secret project, and that involves writing a module. And oftentimes I'm just kind of sharing screen, going through things, and I've gotten some good tips on debugging, which debugging in VS Code is actually pretty simple. It's just I usually don't think to do it. Basically, you just add a breakpoint and run F5, I think, and it will run it with the breakpoint. And you're able to access variables and kind of sanity check what the code is actually done while it's running. So the entry point to that is pretty low, but it feels intimidating. And I've had some issues with VS Code where I need to close and restart it, which if you don't do that soon enough, you might kind of run into a brick wall for a little bit, wondering why it's not working. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of debugging, especially with VS Code. They make it pretty simple. In every language, I think there's debugging support. Well, I can't say every language, but most decent sized languages will have debugging support in VS Code, maybe all languages. And you just click the little, to the left of the line, there's a little click, and you can get like a little red dot called the breakpoint. Then you run the code, and it'll stop there. And it'll let you access all the variables that are currently present in the function or whatever, a script, whatever you're doing. With functions, it can be really helpful. Because sometimes you need to call other functions with inside of it, and testing that just from the console or replicating that in the console could be a little tough. But even if you're not using VS Code, there is like set PS breakpoint, I believe is the command name, where you can interact with breakpoints that way as well. Cool. But yeah, it's a good step to do. At least dabble around. But again, if you're not finding yourself with the need of like major debugging, maybe your issues are not to that level. It can be a little overkill for some of those more simple tasks, which a lot of times what I'm doing in PowerShell isn't game changing. It's like I need a quick little script to do X, Y, or Z. And I kind of write that, and I'm able to just kind of inline check and do it from the terminal. My favorite way of writing PowerShell is running things in the terminal and, okay, it's working, put it in the script. And then I kind of work out of that and add some modifications, some parameters, and usually it works.
For sure.
Not always.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What are the most common issues you run into when running PowerShell? Is it like typing things in wrong, maybe querying the wrong variable?
I would say probably like the if statement just seems to be wrong. I maybe fat fingered a variable on it or something. That always seems to be where I have to go back and fix it.
Are you writing in VS Code?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, always using VS Code.
Yeah, the IntelliSense in there is helpful for me. Occasionally I get lost and I accidentally delete a bracket somewhere and move things around, and I have to spend a minute figuring out where do I need to add that bracket again, because I got an if and then a for each and then another if inside of it and a switch statement outside of that. And I'm like, yeah, I think they do some bracket pair colorization kind of thing so you can see where the start and end bracket is, but that can break if you have an extra bracket or maybe one too few. It can be hard to know exactly where to put it, which bit me last week for a little bit. I probably spent 3 minutes trying to fix that. And that was, again, in that PowerShell meeting where everyone's watching. Always fun to write PowerShell when people are staring over your shoulder.
It's always yeah. The demo guys, for sure. It's yeah. Now that you say that, yeah, that definitely is a problem for me too. When you take out a little if something statement and then forget a bracket or two. I can't remember what it is offhand right now, but I have a little plugin in VS Code that colorizes the tabbing, so I tend to like tab out specific, like this is that if else lives in here within that try catch that's separated out, so it makes it a little bit more visual for me. Yeah,
so for everything I do in VS Code, I'm pressing F1 if I want to interact with VS Code. So F1, and then you type in format, or if you have format on save configured, you just save it and it should align it for you based on how things are. But yeah, that sounds pretty helpful. I don't know if I have that one. I'd have to open up VS Code and FAFO. I will give a shout out if we're talking about VS Code. Maybe you're newer to it. If you want a collection of a whole bunch of extensions that make the SysAdmin and VS Code PowerShell life a little bit easier, that's the PowerShell extension. Wait, what is it? I'm just going to look up Justin Grody. Justin Grody has one. It'll be linked in the show notes. He has a collection of like 30 plus. I don't know exactly how many it is. A whole bunch of extensions that work really well with VS Code and PowerShell that add a whole bunch of quality of life things. You want to interact with Azure, there's extensions for that. A really cool collection of tools is like the remote tools. So one thing I've done a lot with it is like have a Raspberry Pi. The interface and interacting with that, I don't want to connect things. I don't want to connect my HDMI, but I can configure it to connect with SSH, and I can, from my machine, type all my PowerShell, my same VS Code, and interact with it and save it on the remote device and test things out. So for like simple home automation type things, I really enjoy that approach. Again, VS Code, if you're not using it, I highly recommend it. Maybe you have a similar tool that's working really well for you. Awesome. If you're in the ISE, check out VS Code. It's going to help you with PowerShell stuff, but also say you want to do some C# basics. It's going to be there for you there as well. I think I have another podcast coming out by the time this is out, it'll be out, where we talk about some of that stuff. And yeah, VS Code is that similar to PowerShell. You want it in your tool set and it'll keep giving you value for the rest of your career, I think. I mean, I can't vouch for VS Code.
I have to agree. 20 years from now. There's a lot of untapped. I'll have to check that one out personally. I didn't know you could do that. That sounds really cool with SSH.
Oh, it is sick. And also there's like remote share. So, your security policies have to be in line with it. But potentially you and I are working on something. I'm on my home machine, not my work machine. And we want to work on a script together. Well, we can work on the same script at the same time. I can give you access to my terminal if you want to run and interact with the variables that are in the console as well. And I can see where your cursor is, where my cursor is. It can be really helpful for pair programming. And again, those are free extensions. I think it's called VS Code Live Share.
Cool. Oh, okay. I was going to say, is that like Code Spaces, but I guess different.
Yeah. Code Spaces are pretty cool as well. If you didn't know, anytime you're on a GitHub repository, just press the period key and it'll open up a code space, GitHub code space, where you can have VS Code in the browser. You don't even need it installed, which is cool for a bunch of use cases. Maybe you're working with somebody who you don't want to go through all that setup initially. You want to get right into showing them the PowerShell thing, because we want to reduce the barrier to entry whenever possible. And that's a great way to do it. And I love any tooling that makes that barrier to entry a little bit easier, which is why I also love the PS Readline module. A ton of improvements there that are aimed to make the beginner PowerShell experience, and really any PowerShell experience, better. But, removing all those hurdles when possible is always a good thing.
Yeah, pro tips for sure.
And, documentation plays a big role in removing those hurdles. So if you're writing functions out there, make sure you got the docs as well. Well, Drew, it's been a pleasure talking with you, but I got a few more questions. Some of these are harder than others.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready?
Hit me, yeah.
What is the best food in the world?
Oh, gosh, that's
only one.
Subjective. Oh, no,
only you, one. You don't have to speak for everyone. Speak for yourself.
Okay. Man. I'm going to say like stuffed crust cheese pizza with mushrooms on it. That's my favorite thing in the world.
Pizza.
Yeah. Make a little pizza crust at home, let it sit in the fridge for a couple of days, let it, get a little extra flavor, and then you just kind of fold it up, put some cheese sticks in there, make a little homemade sauce while you're waiting, and just throw it in that oven. I'm telling you.
Nice, man. Have you thought about making a YouTube channel for this?
My fiance has talked about it a lot. She also brings up about like, what if we did like a food truck on the weekend? And I was like, I don't know if I want to go into all that, but yeah, no, it'd be interesting. But we have thought about it. I don't know, perhaps.
To do a slight callback to what I mentioned earlier, it's called the PowerShell Extension Pack by Justin Grody. It has 32 extensions in there, all kinds of stuff. Most of them are not directly PowerShell related. Yeah, I'll have a link to that in the show notes if you are out there listening and looking for some cool extensions to make you feel like an epic hacker. All right. Next question, good sir. What is one time you had to write a PowerShell script, you didn't quite know what to do, and you had to reach out for external help? That could have been a blog, that could have been online, that could have been a friend. What is one PowerShell script or PowerShell task in general where it was a little outside of your reach, and how'd you handle it?
Yeah, I remember one with Active Directory where we needed to I believe it was grab the existing users and then change their titles. It just some of the loops were a little bit eluded me as far as kind of for each. I find that one's kind of tough when you're kind of pretty new to PowerShell. So that just asked internally, banged my head on it for probably a little bit longer than I needed to, but I asked for some help and we got it done.
Nice. With your knowledge now, what tip would you give your younger self? Not other people, just you. What is one thing that would have boosted along your career a little bit faster?
I would say, I don't want to say just get out there and try it sooner, but don't be as reserved as far as trying to work on things that you feel are above your wheelhouse. Obviously, don't break production, go through the right channels, but don't try to limit yourself in, reaching farther sooner.
Yeah, always good to find that challenge that's a little bit above where you are now. Not too much. We're not going to recreate Azure from scratch, but just a little bit outside, work on those skills, give you some good confidence. And as you do that multiple times, you're going to have a lot more confidence going forward. And I think that sounds like sort of the boat you're in now. You're implementing things, you're researching things, you're kind of doing it. You've done a few, you get that confidence and you figure out how you approach these things best, how you learn best, how you filter this information and apply it. And you're going to probably be doing that for the rest of your career. The learning will never end.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. Top 3 favorite modules. Hit me with them.
Okay. I'm going to say import in Excel for sure. And then I've been using PS Windows Update. Just personally at home for managing those updates and whatnot on different, personal devices is always super helpful in my mind. And then I love package management and installers and stuff. It's kind of my jam as far as PowerShell goes. So Winget is definitely was kind of like my intro into doing that. Now I kind of write my own personal ones, but I'm a big fan of Winget.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I think they've been improving that module and that whole experience over the years. So maybe we'll have a Winget presentation at some point.
Cool.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you out there for listening. This has been another episode of the PowerShell Podcast. And if you've enjoyed it, if you're listening, give us a like, a comment, maybe a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Maybe you're listening on Spotify. Shout out to the Spotify friends out there. If you're listening to this episode and you're on Spotify, it likely means you started at episode 1 because that's their default. So appreciate you being here with us. It's awesome to see the community continue to grow and thrive. And if you're out there and you're struggling, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here for you. Where can people find you on the World Wide Web, Drew? They dug what you said. They want a couple more details on the recipes you recommended, whatever the case may be. Where can we find you?
Yeah, for sure. I would say LinkedIn, just Drew McClellan and at LinkedIn. I'm on X occasionally, but mostly on LinkedIn these days.
Me too. Same boat, mostly on LinkedIn. And I'll have links to everything we talked about, links to Drew, links to Andrew. You know what? We probably have the same name. We're just getting to that, but...
Just Drew. No Andrew, but...
Well, we share part of the same name, so...
Yeah, it's a cool part.
We're like cousins, not brothers.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody out there. Drive safe, walk safe, whatever you're doing, do it safely, and take care of yourself. Until next week.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.